Imagine your absolute worst enemy, like the one person actively trying to ruin your reputation or maybe, sabotage your career or just cause you intense harm.
Yeah, someone who really wants to see you fail.
Right. Now imagine that due to some bizarre clerical error, that specific person is legally forced to parade you through the city streets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they have to shout your praises at the top of their lungs for everyone to hear. It sounds like a ridiculous premise for a Hollywood comedy, honestly.
It really does. It sounds completely absurd.
But it is actually one of the most brilliant theological concepts operating in the biblical text. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I'm so glad you are joining us today.
Glad to be here for this.
For this deep dive, we're looking at two fascinating texts that unpack a concept known as holy reversal, or divine irony within the biblical narrative.
Yeah, it's an incredible topic.
We have gathered a stack of historical analyses, and our mission today is to examine how the biblical authors use this literary and theological instrument to completely overturn human expectations.
And we are addressing you directly today, the listener, because we want to walk through this together.
Absolutely. But before we get into the historical events, we need to define our terms. When the authors of our source material talk about biblical irony, what does that actually mean?
Well, we have to be clear, because we are not talking about sarcastic jokes or, a cynical punchline, are we?
Right, because it's a completely different mechanism, isn't it?
Spot on. Biblical irony is a deliberate instrument used by the authors to reveal a specific truth, to expose human pride, and to demonstrate how God executes his sovereign will.
So it isn't just dark humor.
No, it is never cynical. I mean, cynicism assumes the universe is meaningless and chaotic. Biblical irony occurs when the stated visible appearance of a situation is completely overturned by a hidden, superior reality.
Okay, that makes sense.
The text consistently shows us scenarios where wicked individuals imagine they are free, clever, and untouchable. Yet the narrative reveals their stated appearance is a total illusion.
Like the rug getting pulled out from under them.
Yes, precisely. The strong are made weak. The wise are shown to be fools. The despised are raised up by an unseen hand. It's a systematic dismantling of human arrogance.
That is a staggering thought. It is not about making you laugh. It is about uncovering reality.
Right, it strips away the illusion.
The text is forcing the reader to look past the superficial layer of who holds the political authority or, who has the most money. Today, we are going to look at two specific events from our source material that showcase this holy reversal perfectly.
Two very different historical settings, yeah.
First, we are going to look at a single, quiet, sleepless night in the ancient Persian city of Susa, found in the book of Esther, specifically chapter 6.
And then?
Then we are going to look at a loud, violent mock coronation in a Roman praetorium, found in Matthew chapter 27.
The contrast between the two settings is striking, yet the theological principle remains totally consistent.
One happens behind closed doors, right?
Right, in a quiet palace. And the other happens out in the open, surrounded by a hostile military cohort. The mechanisms of irony operate in both the shadows and the light.
Let's start with the Persian Empire. We need to set the scene thoroughly for you. We are in the royal city of Susa, the winter capital of the empire, under the reign of King Ahasuerus, who is widely identified in historical records as Xerxes.
A massive, sprawling empire.
Yeah, and the Jewish people at this time are not living comfortably in Jerusalem. They are geographically dispersed, politically vulnerable exiles living under Gentile domination.
They have no Davidic king sitting on a throne.
Exactly. Right. There are no visible miracles happening, there are no prophets speaking thunderous oracles from mountaintops, and there are no angelic interventions.
It feels very quiet.
Quiet and, frankly, very dangerous for a marginalized group.
It is an incredibly volatile environment. To grasp the sheer scope of that danger, we have to look closely at the primary antagonist of the narrative, a high-ranking official named Haman.
The text introduces Haman with a very specific, deliberate detail, doesn't it?
It does. He is called an Agagite. For the original readers, that is not just a piece of random biographical trivia.
It's loaded with history.
Highly loaded. That lineage connects him directly to Israel's ancient enemies, the Amalekites.
Oh, the ones from the wilderness wanderings.
Right. The Amalekites were the first nation to attack Israel after they fled Egypt, specifically attacking the stragglers and the weak in the wilderness.
So there is bad blood there.
Centuries of it. Later, King Saul famously lost his kingship because he failed to obey the command to deal definitively with the Amalekite king Agag.
Wow, okay, so when a Jewish man named Mordecai, who is from the tribe of Benjamin, which is the exact same tribe as King Saul, refuses to bow before Haman the Agagite, we are looking at something far bigger than a petty workplace squabble.
Absolutely. This refusal taps into centuries of covenantal hostility.
It's not just a personality clash.
Not at all. Haman's anger escalates immediately from a personal offense to a state-sanctioned decree to exterminate the entire Jewish population across the empire.
Let's just pause and think about that from the perspective of an exile living in that specific moment.
That would be terrifying.
If you are a Jewish exile living under this Persian decree, it looks like an entirely hopeless situation. The machinery of the greatest empire on earth, an empire stretching from India to Ethiopia, has just been weaponized against your family.
And there is nowhere to run.
Plus, there is a famous fact about the Book of Esther. God's name is completely absent from the text. He's not mentioned once.
Which is a striking literary choice.
So I have to push back a little here on the idea of divine providence. If you are reading this text and God's name isn't there and the government has signed a death warrant, isn't it a bit of a stretch to call this a holy reversal?
That's a fair question.
Couldn't a skeptical reader just say this is a story about dumb luck and, political maneuvering?
Well, that is the precise tension the author wants you to feel. The absolute absence of God's name is a brilliant literary technique that actually intensifies the irony.
How does it intensify it?
Because the author is training the reader to see that visible human authority like massive wealth, social status, and ironclad royal decrees is completely subordinate to invisible divine governance.
So the silence is intentional.
Yes. The world operates on the assumption that the person sitting on the visible throne holds the true authority. The text, however, demonstrates that God is the decisive active agent, even when he remains unnamed and unseen.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
And the stage is set with terrifying stakes. Haman is so consumed by hatred that he has a massive gallows built, towering 50 cubits, roughly 75 feet over the city.
75 feet? That is absurd.
It is a structure of sheer psychological derangement, built for one man, and it is fully prepared for Mordecai at dawn. The decree is signed. The enemy appears to have total victory.
So we have this terrifying 75-foot structure standing ready in the dark. And that brings us to the hinge of the entire narrative, which takes place in the quietest, most understated way imaginable.
The contrast is brilliant.
Esther chapter 6 opens with this simple sentence, "On that night could not the king sleep." It almost feels too mundane.
It really does.
Imagine a modern executive, the CEO of a massive multinational corporation, waking up at 3 in the morning. He is tossing and turning, his mind is racing, and he just cannot get back to sleep.
We've all been there.
Right. But he does not turn on an entertaining movie or grab a glass of wine. He reaches for the most boring document he can find, hoping it will put him to sleep.
A desperate move from insomniac.
He asks his assistant to bring him the corporate minutes from a regulatory board meeting held 3 years ago. A house arrest is the ancient equivalent of that.
With all the entertainment of the Persian court at his disposal.
Yeah, he asks for the royal administrative chronicles to be read out loud.
The mundane nature of that moment is the core of the irony here. Ahasuerus is simply seeking a diversion for his insomnia, but the mechanism of reading those dry records uncovers a massive, neglected debt.
What do they find in those records?
The reading reveals that Mordecai had previously uncovered an assassination plot against the king, orchestrated by 2 officials named Bigthan and Teresh. Mordecai literally saved the king's life.
That is a huge deal.
Right, and when the king asks what recognition or dignity was given to Mordecai for this incredible act of loyalty, the servants answer with a devastatingly brief sentence.
Which is?
There was nothing done for him.
Ouch.
Yeah. The theological weight of that single sentence is staggering. The author is presenting a sharp contrast between 2 types of memory.
Human versus divine.
Precisely. Earthly memory is entirely fallible. The most powerful man on earth completely forgot the man who saved his life. But providential memory is absolutely perfect.
It doesn't miss a thing.
No, it doesn't. The author is showing us that God stored that unrewarded good deed in the royal archives for the precise moment it was required to dismantle Haman's plot.
Think about how frustrating that is on a human level, though.
Oh, incredibly frustrating.
If you are listening to this and you have ever saved a massive project at work, only to watch your manager take all the credit while you get absolutely zero recognition, you know exactly how Mordecai's situation feels.
You feel totally forgotten.
You do. But the text suggests that timing is not just a clock ticking, it is a highly orchestrated sequence. Your uncredited work might just be sitting in an archive, waiting for the proper moment.
That is a highly relevant application for everyday life. This single sleepless night functions as a massive rebuttal to two extreme errors that people frequently fall into.
What is the first error?
First, it rebukes practical atheism.
Meaning what exactly?
Practical atheism is the assumption that political influence, bureaucratic paperwork, royal favor, and basic human timing are simply natural forces operating on their own.
Like it's just a random universe.
Right. But the author of Esther shows us that even a bout of insomnia belongs entirely to divine governance. The physical bodily conditions of a pagan monarch are utilized to accomplish a covenantal promise.
That is incredible. And what is the second error?
Second, it rebukes religious mysticism. That is the mindset that demands visible, supernatural thunderclaps, parting seas, or burning bushes before it will believe God is actively working.
People want the Hollywood special effects.
They do. But the narrative proves that the Lord does not need to shake a mountain to rule an empire. He can overturn an entire state-sanctioned genocide through a restless night and a dusty, boring chronicle.
So just as the king realizes he owes a massive unpaid debt to Mordecai, the timing aligns flawlessly.
That's perfect.
The king asks who is in the court, and at that exact second, the villain arrives.
The collision of intentions here is a masterpiece of dramatic irony. The king is asking who is in the court because he urgently wants to honor Mordecai.
And Haman is there for the opposite reason.
Right. Haman has just walked into the outer court, arriving extremely early because he urgently wants to ask permission to hang Mordecai on the gallows. They are separated by a few walls with completely opposite agendas regarding the exact same man.
This is where the trap snaps shut. The king poses a blind question to Haman. He says, "What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?"
He leaves the man completely unnamed.
And our source material dissects Haman's internal monologue, which the biblical text explicitly provides.
Which is so rare in ancient texts.
It is. Haman reasons in his heart, "To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself?"
That internal monologue provides a thorough theological diagnosis of a fallen, proud heart.
How so?
Pride narrows a person's entire universe until they are the absolute center of it. Haman cannot conceive of a reality where anyone else is the object of delight. The text exposes the irrational slavery of arrogance.
It really makes you blind.
It does. Think about Haman's actual situation. He already possesses massive wealth, he has dozens of sons, he has secured a promotion above all other officials, and he has exclusive access to the royal family.
He has it all on paper.
But all of that wealth and status means absolutely nothing to him as long as one single man, Mordecai, refuses to validate his ego by bowing. His pride makes his vast wealth completely worthless to him.
It is the ultimate blind spot. Instead of the corporate executive analogy, let's think about this like a judo match.
I like that.
In judo, you don't necessarily use your own aggressive force to defeat an opponent. You use their own momentum and their own weight against them.
Right, you let them throw themselves.
Haman's massive ego is his momentum. The king just steps out of the way and lets Haman's pride throw him flat on the mat. Haman writes the script for his own worst nightmare because he assumes he is the main character of the universe.
That judo analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. Haman's self-love becomes the very trap that ensnares him. He designs his own humiliation because he is completely blinded by his ego.
He practically volunteers for it.
The author wants us to see the sheer foolishness of a mind consumed by self-exaltation.
Let's look at what he actually proposes, because it is a parade of sheer poetic justice. Haman lists his greedy proposal for honor, and notice that he does not ask for money or land.
No, he wants something else entirely.
He asks for borrowed royal majesty. He says, "Bring the king's own horse, bring the royal robes that the king himself wears, and get a noble herald to lead this man through the city streets, shouting his praises for everyone to hear."
He wants to play king for a day.
Exactly. The appetite of his ambition is fully exposed. He craves the aesthetic of sovereignty.
He wants the populace to look at him and see the king. But then comes the command. The king's response lands with devastating surgical precision.
What does he tell him?
The king says to Haman, "Make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate."
Oh, man.
And he adds, "Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken."
Every single detail Haman just proposed for his own glory, he is now legally commanded to perform for the very man he intended to execute.
Let nothing fail.
That phrasing is incredible. He cannot delegate the job to a lower servant. He cannot skip the public proclamation.
No shortcuts allowed.
He has to physically walk through the city streets, holding the reins of the horse, shouting the praises of his absolute worst enemy. And the aftermath of this parade presents such a stark contrast.
Very stark.
Mordecai, after being treated like royalty and paraded through Susa, simply returns to his ordinary duty at the king's gate. He is not intoxicated by the parade.
But Haman hurries home, mourning, with his head covered in absolute shame.
The contrast reveals their true internal character. Mordecai's stability versus Haman's fragility.
But what happens when Haman gets home is incredibly significant for the theological scope of the book.
What goes down at his house?
He gathers his wife and his advisors, the exact same people who, just the day before, advised him to build the 75-foot gallows. But their tune has completely changed. His wife utters a staggering prophecy. She says, "If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him."
Coming from a pagan household in the Persian Empire, that is a massive admission. Why do they suddenly flip from building a gallows to predicting his absolute doom?
They are acknowledging a cosmic, covenantal reality that completely overrides Persian politics.
They see the writing on the wall.
They recognize that the Jewish people are not just another ethnic minority existing within the empire's borders. They are the people of the covenant.
The historical promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yes, those promises cannot be nullified by a bureaucratic decree or wooden gallows. Even these pagan advisors realize that colliding with the seed of the Jews means colliding with the invincible purpose of the God who preserves them.
Wow. So Haman's fall is suddenly seen not just as bad luck, but as a guaranteed theological certainty. The hidden hand has moved.
It absolutely has.
So we see how silence, insomnia, and bureaucracy are used to execute this holy reversal in the shadows of a Persian palace. But that raises a massive question.
What is that?
Does this mechanism only work behind closed doors in quiet settings? What happens when the enemy isn't a scheming politician in a quiet room, but a screaming mob and a brutal military force operating out in the open?
That is where the narrative shifts.
Our source material addresses this by shifting our focus from the Old Testament to the New Testament.
The underlying mechanism of reversal remains identical, but the stakes, the visibility, and the theological weight are exponentially higher.
We move from the preservation of an ethnic nation to the redemption of the entire world.
The irony moves from a private court to a public execution.
Let's set the stage in the Roman Praetorium. The timeline has shifted centuries forward to Jerusalem during the festival of Passover. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, has just capitulated to the demands of the crowds.
He washes his hands of the situation.
And Jesus is handed over to the Roman auxiliary soldiers. Now, we need to be clear about who these soldiers are. We often picture elite Roman citizens from Italy in shiny armor, but our historical sources paint a very different picture.
Yes, the historical and psychological context is crucial here. These soldiers were not the elite legionnaires from the city of Rome.
Who were they then?
They were local, non-Jewish conscripts. They were primarily drawn from Syrian and Samaritan populations.
That changes the dynamic completely.
It does. Historically, these specific groups harbored intense, systemic, ethnic hatred toward the Jewish nation. There was a constant simmering hostility in the region.
So it wasn't just a job to them.
No, it was deeply personal. These soldiers were poorly paid, stationed in a tinderbox of a city during a massive religious festival, and they despised the locals, who in turn looked down on them.
So to these hardened auxiliary forces, Jesus was not just another random prisoner on death row.
Because he held the title King of the Jews, he became the perfect physical caricature of the very people they intensely despised.
They saw an opportunity.
An opportunity to mock the entire Jewish nation by pouring their hatred onto its supposed king.
It functions like a psychological pressure release valve for them. Punching Jesus is their way of punching the entire nation that hates them.
That is a very accurate way to frame it.
And they had a specific custom for this type of mockery, right? The text calls it the gathering of the whole cohort, which is roughly 600 soldiers.
A massive crowd of armed men.
They're gathering against a solitary victim to play a twisted historical custom derived from the Saturnalia festival.
It was a recognized psychological and physical torture game. The Saturnalia involved reversing societal roles for a brief period, often with cruel outcomes for the vulnerable.
How did the game work?
The soldiers would take a condemned man, dress him up as a mock monarch, subject him to a brief period of farcical luxury mixed with intense physical abuse, and then lead him out to be crucified. By bringing the entire cohort of 600 men into the praetorium, they transformed a standard legal execution into a massive theater of sadistic entertainment. 600 battle-hardened, resentful men against one silent prisoner.
We need to look closely at the specific details of this sovereign satire. The text mentions they strip him of his garments and put a scarlet cloak on him.
A very specific detail.
Now, here is where my curiosity piques, and I have to ask you for some clarification. The text specifically says they put a scarlet robe on him. Why scarlet? If they are mocking a king, wouldn't a king historically wear purple?
That is a sharp observation, and the Greek vocabulary used by the author provides the exact answer. The text uses the phrase kalamaida kokanen.
What does that translate to?
Matthew is highly specific in noting that this was a scarlet military cloak. While purple was the exclusive, highly expensive color of imperial royalty, scarlet was the standard, cheap color worn by Roman military officers.
Oh, I see.
They were utilizing a discarded, faded soldier's cloak. By doing this, they were not just mocking him as a generic, far-off monarch in a palace.
They were making a specific political statement.
Yes, they were specifically mocking him as a failed, conquered military pretender. It adds a layer of socio-political satire to their cruelty. They're essentially saying, look at this pathetic rebel general whose army has completely abandoned him.
So the very fabric of the cloak is a deliberate, calculated insult. And then they move to the crown. They weave a crown of thorns.
The crown is perhaps the most heavily laden theological symbol in the entire event.
Break that down for us.
The Greek phrase is Stephanon ex akanthon. Now, a Stephanos was not a royal diadem passed down through a dynasty. It was a victor's wreath, typically given to a conquering athlete or a victorious general.
Like the olive branch wreaths you see in ancient art.
Right, exactly. Well, yes. But making it out of thorns creates a direct, undeniable literary and theological link back to the curse of Genesis chapter 3.
When humanity rebelled in the garden.
Yes, the ground was cursed to produce thorns and thistles. By creating this crown and forcing it onto his head, the soldiers were completely unaware that they were placing the literal, physical emblem of the Edenic curse directly onto the brow of the Son of God.
Wow, that is heavy.
He is acting as the covenant substitute, bearing the literal physical manifestation of human rebellion on his own flesh.
That concept is staggering to think about. The soldiers think they are just being clever and cruel, finding whatever sharp weeds are lying around the courtyard.
They think this is just a joke.
But they are actually acting out the deepest theological reality of the universe without having a clue what they're doing.
They are instruments in a much larger narrative.
And they finish the costume with a fragile scepter. They place a hollow reed, a calamon, in his right hand.
It is meant to mock his authority.
Right, a scepter that could snap in a stiff breeze. Meanwhile, the irony is that they are entirely unaware that the actual hand holding that flimsy reed is the same hand that sustains the entire universe and holds their very breath in its grasp.
The contrast between the visible weakness of the reed and the invisible dominion of the Creator is the pinnacle of this divine irony.
It is just massive.
The soldiers see a broken, bleeding man holding a weed, but faith sees the sovereign Lord upholding creation while voluntarily submitting to the mockery of his own creatures.
The sheer restraint required to hold that reed and not speak a word is incomprehensible.
It really is.
And the scene escalates from costume design into this twisted imperial salute. They fall on their knees in mock genuflection and they shout, "Hail, King of the Jews!"
They're treating him like Caesar.
But every syllable is dripping with venom.
The linguistic analysis of that shout is utterly fascinating. The phrase they use in the text is chair obesilistin Iudaean.
How does that break down grammatically?
Grammatically, this mirrors the exact structure of the Roman imperial salute, Ave Caesar. But Matthew notes that they use the nominative noun with the article functioning as a vocative.
Whoa, hold on a second. Nominative noun functioning as a vocative. My high school grammar is incredibly rusty. What does that actually mean in plain English for the listener?
Fair enough. I mean, I don't want to get lost in the weeds of grammar here.
Please keep it simple for us.
Basically, in Greek, if you want to address someone casually, you use the vocative case, like saying, hey, king. But by using the nominative with the article, they are using highly emphatic, definitive language.
So it changes the meaning.
Right. In their attempt to be as insulting and theatrical as possible, the grammar they chose forced them to literally say, you are the king.
Oh, that is wild.
They inadvertently declare him to be the absolute definitive monarch. The author showing us that God's sovereign governance forces their unregenerate pagan mouths to state an unalterable cosmic fact.
Even while they are laughing.
Yes, their malicious intentions are completely hijacked by divine providence to proclaim absolute truth.
That clears it up perfectly. They think they're writing a cruel comedy sketch, but God is using their lines to announce the actual coronation of the king.
The irony is weaponized against their mockery.
But the scene does not stay theatrical. The soldiers transition from this mock worship into brutal physical violence. They spit on him, they take that fragile reed and use it to repeatedly beat the crown of thorns deeper into his head.
It turns incredibly ugly.
And throughout all of this violence, Jesus remains entirely silent. He does not defend himself. He does not call down a legion of angels to obliterate the fortress.
His silence is not the silence of a defeated victim. It is the silence of active, calculated obedience.
What do you mean?
The contrast between human depravity and divine submission is incredibly sharp here. The soldiers escalate their hatred because unregenerate humanity naturally recoils at the holiness of God.
It exposes their own darkness.
Precisely. When presented with absolute purity, their reaction is violence. But Christ submits to the spitting, the beating, and the shame voluntarily.
He could have stopped it at any moment.
But he didn't. According to the theological framework of the text, he is bearing the literal curse in order to clothe his people in perfect righteousness.
The mock coronation was a necessary mechanism.
He received the crown of thorns so that his people could receive the crown of life. Every strike he endured was a calculated step in his substitutionary work.
So, we have walked through these two massive historical narratives. We have a Persian bureaucrat humiliated in the streets of Susa, and we have the Son of God mocked in a Roman praetorium.
Two incredible displays of holy reversal.
How do these ancient holy reversals apply to the listener walking through their daily life right now? Because most of us are not facing ancient Persian decrees or Roman cohorts.
The primary application is learning to trust thoroughly in the hidden providence of God.
What does that look like, practically?
We have to actively reject the modern pragmatic mindset that assumes reality is only composed of what we can measure, see, or calculate on a spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet mentality is so common today.
It is. We also have to reject the illusion of human sovereignty, the idea that the people who hold the money and the authority actually control the future.
So when a listener faces a hostile environment, a massive setback in their workplace, or a long, quiet season where their faithful, honest labor goes completely unnoticed.
Just like Mordecai's unrewarded good deeds sitting in a dusty archive.
Right. They must anchor themselves in the truth that God governs the smallest, seemingly secular details.
A bout of insomnia, a lost document, a delayed meeting, a seemingly random comment from a coworker. These are the actual instruments of God's governance.
You do not need to panic when the modern equivalent of a gallows is being built around you because God controls the timing of the morning.
That is a vital perspective shift. It takes the panic out of our daily struggles.
And there's also a warning here, a mirror held up to our own hearts. We like to think of ourselves as Mordecai, but Haman is not just a cartoon villain. He is a mirror for the human condition.
Oh, for sure.
Whenever we find ourselves unable to rejoice because someone else got the promotion at work, or whenever our universe shrinks down to our own ego and our own desires, we are acting precisely like Haman.
Pride makes us utterly miserable, even when we have 100 objective reasons to be grateful. Haman had everything, and he was miserable because of one man.
But looking at the cross offers a vastly better reversal than Haman's trap, doesn't it?
Spot on. Haman's pride led to his absolute destruction. His intense desire to be exalted brought him straight to the grave he built for someone else.
A grave of his own making.
But the cross provides the true, lasting remedy for that kind of pride. At the cross, the proud are brought low, but the humbled sinner is lifted up.
Christ took the ultimate humiliation.
Acting as the substitute, yes, so that those who confess their own pride and trust in him can be raised to eternal life. It is the greatest holy reversal in the history of the world.
The innocent willingly died for the guilty, so that the guilty could be legally and thoroughly declared innocent.
It is a staggering reality.
That brings all the historical and theological threads together beautifully. As we wrap up this deep dive, it becomes clear that the biblical authors do not use narrative pacing, hidden details, and historical irony as clever literary puzzles just to keep us entertained on a Sunday morning.
No, there is a much heavier purpose.
These narratives exist to reveal a bedrock truth about reality. The world is not governed by appearances, political calculations, or the volume of the loudest voices in the room.
God makes the wrath of man praise him.
He turns the weapons of the enemy into the very tools of their own defeat.
The visible inputs simply do not dictate the final outcome. The unseen hand of the sovereign Lord orchestrates every minor detail to preserve his people and accomplish his absolute will.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Think about the biggest obstacle or the most difficult enemy in your life right now.
Something that feels insurmountable.
Maybe it is a frustrating career delay, a highly difficult person you have to deal with every single day, or a massive door that just slammed shut in your face.
We all have those moments.
What if that exact obstacle is not a barrier to your progress? What if it is the very instrument God is actively using to script your deliverance and build your character completely behind the scenes?
The gallows they build may be the exact mechanism God uses to vindicate you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time on Reformed Thinking.